It's like Israel, and it's interruption. But this the book of Exodus. We dealing with naked. We showing that naked means being in sin. So this the book of Exodus, chapter 32. We're gonna start at verse 20. Or we at verse 25. So, and when Moses saw that the people were naked, for Aaron had made them naked unto their shame among their enemies, then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come unto me. And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves together unto him. So when Moses he came down from the mount after receiving the tables of stone, he came down and saw the people naked and sin, because they had made Aaron had made them golden calves, idols, which is, they was going off. He saw them in sin, because we know that the Lord told them not to worship idols, nor make anything or graven image, whether it be in heaven, earth, or in the sea. So that's what they did. So when Moses came down from the mountain, he saw the people naked and sin. So I'm going to read it again, verse 25. And when Moses saw that the people were naked and sin, for Aaron had made them naked unto their shame among their enemies. So Aaron made them naked before their enemies in sin, and it was to their shame. So that's what that means. Naked means being in sin. But let's get another a precept. So this is the book of 2 Chronicles, I think 28:19. Excuse me, Salakia, bro. 28. Alright, right. So this is the book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 28 and verse 19. For the Salakia. For the Lord brought Judah low because of Ahaz, king of Israel, for he made Judah naked and transgressed sore against the Lord. So he made Judah to sin and transgress sore against the Lord. During these times of these kings, Salakia Israel, during the time of these kings, or King Ahaz, they was worshiping the gods of the other nations. They were setting up groves and all these other things within Israel, and doing sacrificing to idols instead of the Lord thy God. So Ahaz, he made them naked and sin and transgressed sore against the Lord. So that was going on. That's all that means. But let's get one more precept to further prove it. It's the book of Lamentations. Excuse me. It's the book of Lamentations, chapter 1. And I'm going to start at chapter 1, verse 8. Yeah. Alright, so this is the book of Lamentations, chapter 1 and verse 8. Jerusalem have grievously sinned, therefore she is removed. All that under her despise her, because they have seen her nakedness. Yea, she sighed and turned her backward. So everybody that under her, they're under Jerusalem now despise, because they have seen her nakedness. They have seen her in sin. They have seen her go backwards, or the case may be. So when the Lord, when we was in sin, these other nations were able to rise up against us and despise us, or the case may be, because we didn't keep our the commandments, or the case may be, because the Lord told us in Deuteronomy, this is our wisdom among the nations, that we keep the commandments, or the case may be. So when we didn't do that, it was like a shame, or the case may be. So let's go back to Genesis chapter 2. So when it says they was naked, well, we're in chapter 3 now. So when it says they were naked, it just means that they knew they was in sin. They was in sin. So earlier when I read in Genesis chapter 2, verse 25, and they were both naked, the man and the wife, and were not ashamed. At that point, they didn't have no knowledge of sin. They was ignorant to sin. All they knew was righteousness. So down here, when they finally went off and took the philosophies of the other nations, then were their eyes open to evil, and they knew that they were in sin. So this is the book of Genesis chapter 3 and verse 7. And the eyes of them were both open, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. So they knew that they was in sin. And when it's saying they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons, that don't actually mean that they went to a tree, start picking off the things off the tree. Eve got a sewing machine. She starts sewing leaves and fig leaves together for her and Adam, and put them on and wore them as aprons, or the case may be. No. When he said they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons, it's also going into they took of the other nations' philosophies and doctrines, or the case may be. They was intermingling with the other nations. But let's prove that. I'm gonna get Mark 8. Yeah, I'm gonna get Mark. Let me see if I got. I'm gonna get Psalms chapter 1. It's just show you that what they're actually talking about. So I'm gonna show you according to the Bible to actually understand the scripture. I'm gonna show you according to the Bible that men is actually referred to as trees. So this is the book of Psalms, chapter 1 and verse 1. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water. So you already see the correlation. He said this man, he should be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bringeth forth his fruit in season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. So right, he should be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, or the case may be. So when you're a tree planted by the rivers of water, what that actually mean? Hey, this man was planted and he was rooted and grounded. Salaki. He was planted and rooted and grounded, and he was built upon that solid foundation, which is Yahweh Shah. He was planted by the rivers of water. So when you build upon a strong foundation, the roots get to take hold of the ground. You get everything you need. Hey, this man, you become a different man. You're a man of righteousness, of equity, of meekness, of great honor. When you start becoming a man that's planted by the rivers of water and built upon that solid foundation, Yahweh Shah, your tree can bring more forth fruit. Your tree can bring forth more fruit now, or the case may be. Meaning you're gonna continue to increase in knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, being planted by the rivers of water, or the case may be. So verse 3 again. He should be like a tree planted by the rivers of water. Talking about a man, because remember it's referred to as trees in the Bible. So he should be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bring forth fruit in this season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever if he doeth shall prosper. So right, you built upon that solid foundation. So you're not your tree is not gonna wither, or the case may be. You're gonna remain strong. You're gonna stand on your solid ground. So I'm gonna get another example of men referred to as trees in the Bible. This is Psalms chapter 51 and verse 8. So Salakia 52 and 8. So this is the book of Psalms chapter 52 and verse 8. But I am like a green olive tree in the house of God. I trust in the mercy of God forever and ever. So David, he said, I am like a green olive tree in the house of God. So even David referred to himself as a tree, because David was a tree planted by the rivers of water, or the case may be. So even David referred to himself as a tree. So according to the Bible, men are referred to as trees. So let's go back to Genesis 3 and clear up the understanding. So now that you know men are referred to as trees, when you read the book of Genesis chapter 3 and verse 7, and I'm going to read it real quick. And the eyes of them both were open, and they knew that they were naked, meaning they knew that they were in sin. They sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. So we already know men are referred to as trees. So the other nations, they men, or whoever you want to say, they men. They referred to as trees also. So when they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons, they was taking other customs of the other people, their philosophies, their doctrines, or the case may be. They was what they say in the world, or before I even get what they say in the world, they say I'm just plucking some off the tree, or taking some out of the tree, and I want to make it a part of my image. What they say in the world, hey, you biting my swag, hey, you trying to steal my drip, or the case may be. That's all that was going on right then and there. They sewed fig leaves among themselves and sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. Meaning they was following the way of the other nations, their customs, their philosophies, their doctrines. We know, the Lord said in Jeremiah, he said, learn not the way of the heathen, or the case may be. That's what they was doing. They was learning the way of the other nations, the heathen. So that's all that mean when they said they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. So, even then, it's like your brain fart. But right, so that's all they mean. So to further prove that the commandments are here from the beginning, we already established that the commandments, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, Salakia, was given unto Adam. chiefly taking a wife of their own seed. In Deuteronomy chapter 7 through 4, take a wife of their own kindred. Don't deal with these other nations, roughly paraphrasing, loosely paraphrasing. That's ultimately what the verse breaks down to. It's also found here in Genesis, in the beginning. So, let's get another thing. Let's continue. We're going to jump to verse, because we don't understand in chapter 3, they knew they was naked. They knew they was getting punished now, or the case may be. So, we're going to jump to verse 20. Jump to verse 20 and show you what else happened, or what other law was instituted during this time. So this is the book of Genesis chapter 3 and verse 20. And Adam called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living. Unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord make coats of skin and clothe them. So when he said he made coats of skin and clothed them, he instituted the sacrificial laws during this period, so that Adam them had a way to atone for their sins, for them being naked in sin. So that's what that means when he said he made coats of skin and clothed them. Because we know this, that's going back to Yahushua. When Yahushua had to sin and died for the sins of the people, that's how the Most High clothed us and gave us a way to atone for his sins. It connected us back to him, or the case may be. And we know Yahushua became the mediator between God and men. So it's the same thing right here in this instance. When he instituted the sacrificial laws and he clothed it with the coats of skin and clothed them, that became the mediator between God and men. Because prior to this, we didn't have a way to atone for our sins. So when Adam and Eve went off, they didn't have a way to atone for their sins. But we read in verse 21, there was the institution of the sacrificial laws, and there was, or the case may be. But how do we actually know that? We're going to go to chapter 4 and prove that. So this is the book of Genesis chapter 4 and verse 1. And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of the sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So this was the birth of Cain and Abel. So verse 3. And in process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. So right, Cain and Abel, they was bringing offerings unto the Lord. But who did they get this knowledge, or who did they get this from to bring an offering unto the Lord? They got it from Adam, their father. Because they had the sacrificial laws too. Because that was the way for them to atone for their sins. He said, let me get the book of Job, chapter 29 and verse 14 real quick. I believe it's 29 and 14. 29 and verse 14. Right, so this is the book of Job, chapter 29 and verse 14. And it reads, I put on righteousness, and it clothed me, and my judgment was as a robe and a diadem. So right, when you put on this righteousness, these commandments, or the case may be, it'll clothe you. It's a way to cover up, not cover up your sins, but it's like a garment. It clothes you. So right, when you're not keeping these commandments, now you're naked. So when he gave him coats of skin, back in Genesis chapter 3 and 21, the coats of skin was the institution of the sacrificial laws, which became another commandment. And that's what they was clothed with, so that they can have a way to atone for their sins. So Cain and Abel, they brought an offering unto the Lord, and they got this knowledge of offerings from their father Adam, because that commandment was here from the beginning too. So Cain, he bought an apple, or he bought not an apple, salaki, but he bought a fruit from the fruit of the ground. And Abel bought the firstling of his flock and the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel's offering. So Cain's offering was looked down upon, but Abel's offering was looked upon with, hey, okay, it was looked upon with respect, because that's contained in the law. You don't post. The Lord never commanded you to bring a fruit. So Cain, by nature, he was just wicked. He didn't tell you to bring no fruit, but you wanted to do your own thing. So Abel knew the law, which he got from his father, and Cain knew it too, but Cain wanted to do him. But Abel knew, and he did what was contained in the law, and he did the right thing. So we already understand that in the beginning, Hey, we already established that the commandments were given to Adam once again. Just, quick rundowns. But that the commandments were given to Adam. That you're supposed to take a wife of your own people, of your kindred. The institution of the sacrificial laws now. But let's deal with some other laws that's contained in Genesis 2, though. So, we're going to go to Genesis chapter, let me see. I'll be forgetting sometimes. We're going to go to Genesis chapter 7 and 2 real quick. Salakia. Alright, so this is the book of Genesis chapter 7 and verse 2. I'm going to start at 1. And the Lord said unto Noah, come down all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of the beasts that are not clean by two, and the male and his female. So right, even in the beginning, it was a distinguish between clean beasts and unclean beasts, showing you that that was that they had the commandments dealing with that back then too, the dietary laws. And you can read up on the dietary laws in Leviticus chapter 11 and also Deuteronomy chapter 14. But hey, even back then there was a distinguish between the clean beast and between the unclean beast, showing you that that was a law back then too. Let's get another one. Let me think. I'm trying to see. We got Genesis. We're showing clean and unclean. Salakia. All right, so we're gonna deal with Genesis chapter 9 and verse 20. All right, so this is the book of Genesis chapter 9 and verse 20. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. So right, hey, Noah got drunk, and he was in his tent uncovered. He was naked, literally naked. Verse 22, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid upon their shoulders and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. So right, they didn't see their father's nakedness, but Ham, he saw his father's nakedness. Hey, and it don't really tell you, but hey, ain't no telling how long Ham was there before he actually went to his brother and told them. He was just gazing upon his father. So verse 24. Or 29, Salakia. Or, dang, my bad. Verse 24, Salakia. And Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. So he knew, hey, you looked upon my nakedness, or the case may be. So he knew what his younger son had done unto him. So verse 25. And he said, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. So right, Canaan was cursed. He said, a servant of a servant shall he be unto his brethren, or the case may be. So that's what happened. Canaan was a servant unto his brethren. But oh yeah, so basically that was dealing with homosexuality, showing you that was back then too. But just to further get into it, we're gonna go to Genesis 10 and verse 19. Right, Genesis 10 and 19. Because Canaan, or Ham, or the Hamitic people, the so-called Africans, them people, they are a very trying to think of the homosexual nation, where the case may be. Even back then, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, it was inhabited by the children of Ham, the Canaanites, and the other people. So this is the book of Genesis chapter 10 and verse 19. And the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon, as thou comest to Gerar, unto Gaza, as thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboam, even unto Lasha. So right, we ain't even got to get too deeper with that. We know what Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed for. It was destroyed from its homosexuality and its sins, because its sins reached unto heaven, and the only person saved from Sodom and Gomorrah was Lot. Even in Genesis it said Lot was vexed with the conversation with all the things that they was doing to Sodom and Gomorrah. They even tried to rape the two angels that were sent unto Sodom and Gomorrah to get a report against it, or the case may be. So we know Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed with fire and brimstone because of its homosexuality. So like it can get the word out. So even back then, it was that was a law. Homosexuals, yeah, you can't be that was against the Lord. The Lord wasn't messing with that. So you read that homosexuality about in Leviticus. Let me get Leviticus 20 and 13. So this is the book of Leviticus chapter 20 and verse 13. If any man also lie with mankind, is he lie with womankind? Both of them have committed an abomination. They should surely be put to death. Their blood should be upon them. So hey, that was going on back then. Men on men, little boys on little boys, or the case may be. But in contained in law, that was against the Lord, and that's why the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and other cities were destroyed because of homosexuality, or the case may be. So hopefully, y'all was edified and y'all understand that the commandments was here from the beginning, that Adam received the commandments from the Lord, and he was raised up from a lower state, and he was set in the Garden of Eden to dress and to keep it, to get the other nations in order and teach them the commandments in the way of the Lord. Because we know in the beginning that the Lord made all men to be upright, but they sought out their own inventions. We know in Wisdom of Solomon chapter 14 and verse 12 that the corruption of life, or loosely paraphrasing, but spiritual fornication, salakia, but spiritual fornication was the downfall of man, was the beginning of sin. That's how everybody went off, through spiritual fornication, worshiping these other idols, coming up with their own inventions, their own ways of life, or the case may be. So we understand that Adam was set up to dress and keep the ground. And we also went through a couple laws contained in the New Testament. Not the New Testament, in Genesis, man, Salakia, in Genesis. So without further ado, we're going to give a hearty shalom to Israel. And we're going to give our honor and good Salakia, man. But we're going to give all honor and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shah. Shalom, Israel. Barakatah.